Alright guys, these are the best mythic uniques that you want to actually craft. So I want to go ahead and hop right into it, not waste any time. Pretty much the best ones are going to be Ring of the Starless Skies, Tierlist Might, as well as Harlequin Crest. Thanks for watching. Drop a like on your way out. But to be honest, that is kind of the shorter, condensed version of it. But there are definitely things that if you do want to actually min-max certain builds, you definitely want to stick around to actually understand why, and other builds that can take use out of these brand new, updated mythic unique items, aka the Uber uniques. So the mythic uniques are the Uber uniques. They just basically got a massive buff. The purple drops are going to be what these are. So specifically how to farm them really quick, you just do Andariel as well as Andariel. It's the exact same thing to do to farm them, but they actually are going to be dropping a lot more common now. So which ones are the ones that you want to keep, and which ones are the ones that you just want to throw into the incinerator, delete them so you can get that spark so you can craft the good ones, which I kind of already mentioned, but there are definitely going to be areas where you may not be able to fit in those three that I mentioned, but specifically Starless Skies, Harlequin Crest, as well as Tierlist Might, those are going to be the key Uber uniques or the mythic uniques that you want. But every single one of these got updated, and some that are still really bad. So for starters, let's hop right in from the top to the bottom. Let's go through which ones are actually good, and again, which ones you just want to salvage so you can get the spark to craft the good ones. So for starters, Andariel's Visage is actually quite great on these two classes, the Rogue as well as the Druid. They have a lot of generic like poison scalers, and that's what you need to actually make great use out of it. In Season 5, we got a buff with Andariel's, giving us a crazy amount of poison res. We also get max poison res, but those two stats are basically whatever. The main stats that we're actually looking for is the attack speed, all stats, and the life on hit. Those are all great stats, and they have actually buffed the lucky hit chance for that Poison Nova to activate to give you way more damage. They actually combo quite well with another pair of gloves called the Fists of Fate, which actually got a recent update, giving you up to 77.7 on a greater affix rolled on the lucky hit chance, which just really helps out give you crazy amounts of lucky hit chance, which you normally would not have had. You can actually masterwork and pretty much get towards the upper end of 100% lucky hit chance. This is crazy. Before we get like 9 lucky hit chance, and that was a good roll. Now we're getting like 100 if you get like the good roll on this. It's crazy how good a lot of these lucky hit chance damage scalers can actually go towards. If you're interested in Andariel's, Doombringer, all these are actually pretty good now that the lucky hit chance is a lot easier to achieve. So specifically on Druid and Rogue, you can make builds around Andariel's Visage. Easily a top tier one. Now this isn't necessarily a top like tier list, but I'd put this one towards like A or B tier. It depends on the build. It is an absolute S tier build, but depending on the class that you are playing, it's going to be kind of harder to play if you maybe are playing, let's say, like the Sorc. You do have a lot of things like Chain Lightning, which have good lucky hit chance on the base, and if you really want to try to push for it, go for it, but I think Rogue and Druid are going to be the two ones that can take the most advantage out of Andariel's Visage. Next up, this one, we don't need to talk about it too much. It has been bad since the game came out, and it is still very mediocre. So the reason why the Spear of Lycander isn't very good is due to the stats on the item being just not really there. We have Critical Strike, Vulnerable, and Overpower, which is all like 3, and if we just do some quick math, count it as 150. Okay, we have like 450% like additive damage. The problem is that we're missing out on the tempering. We're also missing out on the two-handed aspect. It is way too difficult to throw this into any good build in the game. Even though it gives you movement speed, nowadays resistance is basically free. The percent to all stats, you could just get your character's main stat at like 300% on like any item on a two-hander, or even just getting a GA. That's pretty easy to get. So this isn't really that special. If maybe you got a greater affix to all stats and you really want to become a stacker in one sort of category, remember, you're still missing out on a two-handed aspect plus your tempers. Good luck trying to get good damage with it, because none of the stats are really aggressive in terms of damage other than the implicit, which a lot of classes you can't even really benefit off of overpower. Like the only classes that really can consistently overpower are going to be, of course, the Druid and the Barbarian, and then somewhat on the Necromancer, but well, you're going to only be able to equip it on the Druid and Sorc anyways, so it just doesn't see that much play, and so this is an item I just say go ahead and salvage. Next up, Doombringer, really good for the defensive stats. We're looking at massive amount of all stats, damage reduction. We also get 100% damage, which is a little bit better. We have the heal. We have up to a 25, so it has a higher proc chance than the Andariel's Visage, so that's quite great. If you're looking for defensive stats, Doombringer is going to give you the most defensive stats, plus that 35% maximum life is really juicy. This item is definitely pretty good. So the other one is basically just almost useless. I can't really see a good build using it. It has like the special ability where you get the shrine, but but if I was to make this tier list, this is like pretty much like towards like D or F tier. And then the Doombringer, I put it in like the B tier. It's pretty solid if you're looking again to beef up your defenses. Not too bad, but I wouldn't craft this ASAP. Next up, this is an item that I can see a lot of people crafting ASAP. The new Harlequin. What's good with it? We get double cooldown reduction basically. It's almost triple actually. It's double off of like if you were to like get the whole thing masterworked. Crazy amount of cooldown reduction. I actually got a greater affix one that rolls with 30% cooldown reduction. You get like 50% if you masterwork a G8 one, but that's unrealistic for most people to hit. But crazy good. Absolutely an S tier one over here. We got max life, we got cooldown reduction, we got maximum resource, which is pretty solid, and also that armor is actually really good because a lot of builds you normally had to get like an armor percent roll, temper or something just to cap out an armor, and this makes things much easier because now you throw this on, you throw in skulls on all your pieces of gear, and resistance is a joke now in season 5. Yeah, it's way easier because you can just go ahead and get Tierlist, which is another really great one, but an easy S tier, Uber unique, Mythic unique. It also still has the same damage reduction and plus 4 ranks to all skills. Really solid item overall. Next up, Melted Heart Selig. This one I'd put like D in the F tier. This is just terrible. Unfortunately, this item only got to see some cheesy play where you were like immortal with Barbarian, but it doesn't really do too much here. So you do get plus maximum resistance to all elements, which is a pretty defensive stat, but a lot of times people are looking for more damage, and you just sacrifice too much in the amulet category over here because amulet has 50% bonus on the aspect, right? Getting lucky at chance, while that is good, you could just get regular lucky hit chance and it's not like too far off. If this was like 100% lucky hit, then this could be a kind of a cool item, but it's just too low to really give you some sort of like good damage. Resource gen, movement speed, you also get damage reduction. Again, there's like no offensive stats here, which really hurt in the amulet category. But again, it is incredibly defensive. You gain more maximum resource, and then when you take damage, it would then drain. If you're really trying to run like a max resource build with like, let's say, Banished Lord's Talisman, well, that already covers the amulet slot, so you can't really fit this in. Again, a D and F tier, I would just personally salvage Melted Heart and the Spear. Next up, this is probably the absolute best Uber unique in the game. Another S tier one, the Ruin of the Starless Skies with the newer buffs here. We got more attack speed, more crit, we got lucky hit chance, we got now ranks to core skills, which is still, in some builds you can't make use out of it because you're running basics, but with the new sword, the unique one, Sword of Verathel, this item over here makes it so your basic skills will actually cost primary resource, making it so Starless Skies will be able to activate off of it. So this just confirms itself being like the best ring in the entire game. I would say 99% of builds will be running this if they have access to it. It is just simply too good. It is an absolute S tier mythic unique. This is probably the #1 item I would craft first because it solves resource, which is pretty big. Plus it's got all the greatest stats, like pretty much that you'd want on most builds for a ring. But yeah, this is the first item I would craft, and then the second item would be probably Harlequin or maybe Tierlist, depending on what you need. But those three in general are kind of the best ones. Next up, the Grandfather. This one's really only usable on the Barbarian. Necromancer can technically use it, but there's a huge amount of damage. The amount of all sets that you're getting is quite great. You get 450% damage, you get a massive chunk of life, and maximum resource. They originally had this in the code. It got data mined that this was supposed to give you 300x crit. Now, unfortunately, it never came out like that, and I was really excited because that would have made Barbarian just the best class in the game for like the 5th season in a row. But Barbarian is definitely toned down a little bit, especially since I nerfed one of the bleed key passives. But this item is still okay, specifically on Barbarian. It's kind of like a middle-ish one. Like, it is definitely good, but I would still, if I was to play a lot of builds, I would probably actually go for Starless Skies as well as the other one first, because solving armor resources and getting all those maximum skills, it really does help out quite a bit. While this one is still good, I would not use it, by the way, on Necromancer. It's just simply, it's too hard to give up like those double aspects on a lot of Necromancer builds. But I mean, the 150 all stats is quite juicy, but it's not a bad one. I put it towards like the B tier ish. It's still pretty good, but again, very specific to the Barbarian. And if other classes could use it, there's just no room. If I could, you know, run this on like all the classes, maybe we could see something, because it gives you quite a huge amount of crit. Like maybe even Sorc could mess around with this, but again, it's only at the moment for Barb and Necro, so that doesn't matter anyways. So this one, I would not salvage it if you were playing Barb, but if you were Necro, I don't really see any builds at the moment that are top tier using it, but I don't think it's a bad item. Again, I put it towards like the B tier. Alright, we got the final one, the Tierlist Might. This is another fantastic Uber or Mythic unique to craft. So what makes it so good in Season 5? So we specifically get the massive amount of damage reduction, which basically got doubled. And remember, when you start scaling in the Masterworking and you crit it, wow, it's going to go even higher. And so for that reason alone, that basically covers the chest-like aspect that you normally would throw on. Then we've got movement speed. There are some builds, like for example the Sorceress, which can make use out of the Esu's boots. More movement speed equals more crit strike chance, so that could still be kind of okay. But the main thing that you're really looking for are the two last stats. The resistance to all elements, which basically means if you're playing a class that's not Sorceress or Druid, you instantly just go to max res. It's so easy. I guess resistances were kind of a thing that most players were not able to reach, so Blizzard decided in Season 5 just throw in a lot of resistances on all these pieces of gear. So Tyrael's Might will instantly let you solve pretty much all builds in terms of resistances. And then the stat that actually makes this item the best is the plus maximum to all elements. This is what makes the thing so incredibly powerful. To not go too far into math, the highest amount of all res that you can get, I believe in the game at the current state, is 85, which basically means that you can take a lot less damage with this thing where it has maximum resistance to all elements. Technically Selig has a 3, it's like really low, but that stat is incredibly valuable. To kind of give you an idea, it's not just like, oh, you take 15% less damage, because you are already taking, let's say that your res is at 70, right? You go from 70 to an additional 15 depending on the damage that you would take. To kind of look at this in like math terms, let me actually bring something up because I think this is kind of important here. Alright, so let's do an example. So example 1, we take 10,000 fire damage, but we're resistance cap. So now instead of taking 10,000, we have 70% reduction on fire. So that's going to give us 3,000 damage taken, which is pretty good. Now let's go ahead and say we have the maximum resistance with Tierlist or anything else. So example 2, we take the same amount, so 10,000 fire damage again, but now we have that 85% reduction with the plus 15 maximum resistance as the maximum cap, making it so we now take 1,500. So even though we're only going up 15% in terms of damage reduction, we've actually made it so we take 50% less damage. That's why the plus to maximum resistance in any action RPG is a super godly stat. Let's say you happen to get this greater affix or you start critting on the masterworking, right? You get to 85% maximum to all res. That will basically reduce the damage that you take by half. It is crazy good. On top of also getting flat damage reduction already built on and solving resistances. This is an absolute must for a lot of builds. If you really want to be min-maxing and take the least amount of damage, this is one of the best things in the game. Another S tier unique. So to kind of sum up our video over here, the best ones for 99% of builds, Ring of the Starless Skies, craft that one first, and then Tyrael's and Harlequin are probably like the second ones that I would craft. So those three in particular are going to be used in most builds, but the helmet category is actually quite competitive. There are some builds that can make use out of the Crown of Lucian, so if you can, that item can give you more damage, but technically Harlequin is still going to be one of the best ones for most people, because the other resource that you lose with the brand new Crown of Lucian, it's just too much. But that's going to cover the Uber uniques or the Mythic uniques that you absolutely do want to craft in Season 5. But if you want to know all the rest of the uniques that are definitely going to be good to look out for, and this is your first time here, we're going to be dropping that video later, so subscribe if you guys want to see that, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Peace out.